So thank you all very much for having me along today. Thank you, Michelle, for the invite to speak. And also well done for getting yourselves to what is effectively a work function on a Saturday morning too. Social media as a topic is something that with a couple of glasses of red under my belt we could waffle on for about 3 hours about. There is almost endless parts that you can drill into, examine and analyse. Now, Saturday morning, it's just after 10 o'clock. I'm a techo, I could waffle on for ages. I'm not going to bore you with that aspect, but I'm hoping to give you a bit of an introduction, a bit of a taste. Social media is just a new application of some very old and proven business ideas. And just to give you an idea of if it's something that interests you, if it's something that you think will benefit your business, how you might be able to get yourself started. In this context today, what we're talking about is social media with what we can do for business. It's not about talking about Facebook, about sharing photographs. The context for today is what it means for travel agents, what it can do to stimulate your business. And I'd like to start off with just a quick pop quiz, if anyone's comfortable answering. How do you currently generate new and ongoing business? This day.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Anyone else?
Advertising.
Advertising, which in turn, brand awareness.
Yep.
Direct mail.
Direct mail, there you go. 3, there really actually isn't much more to generating business than variations on those types of themes. In particular, word of mouth is the sort of theme that I'll pick up on quite a bit today. Web 2, or this bi-directional aspect of the internet, was all about the fact that social media platforms turned this pushing of information into dialogue, into communication. So if you ever hear anyone rabbiting on about Web 2 or social media or whatever, it really is about online communication, online conversations and interactivity. And it's therefore the challenge for anyone looking at engaging in social media and making the most of technology. Consider it as, how do I get into the conversations that are taking place in areas that I'm an expert in an area that I offer a product or service in, and an area that I want to make a buck in. That is really what the context of this conversation is about with regard to social media. I think another key aspect of considering social media, if you think about interactive dialogue and conversations, is conversations take place in a location. These websites, online tools, whatever you want to call them, start thinking about them as locations. Think about them as places, and it makes it a lot easier to get your head around the basics and therefore how to apply all of the historical business knowledge you have through this new medium. Like I said before, there is probably 50 or 60 different variants of these key brands on the board. India's got one called Orchid, which has 50 odd million users, which is mostly Indians, and often many countries have specific social media channels to their country. The ones we'll talk about most today, the major brands, is the LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Now, for many people, when they think social media, they simply think Facebook. 750 million users of Facebook at the moment, spending 500 billion minutes per month online. They're pretty big numbers, aren't they? 25 billion pieces of content are exchanged every day on Facebook. It is phenomenal. Let's have a look at Facebook in Australia. So all of this the stats I'm going to give you, the social media comments, by and large, are about social media in the Australian market, social media being used by Australians. So 21, 22 million people in Australia, of which 10.4 million of them have a Facebook account. In July, there were 17 billion visits to Facebook by Australians. Page views, 490 million visits. Facebook users love using Facebook on their mobile phones. They're one of the most active mobile user groups in the world. It's astounding the stats of what Australians are doing. So, an interesting perspective. Can any of you take a guess at the demographics of Facebook users in Australia, age group users? Who are going to be the most popular, do you think?
20 to 30.
Any other stabs? Go on, there's no right or wrong answer.
10 to 15.
Interesting. 50% of the Facebook users in Australia, or about 5 million people in total, are between 25 and 54 years old. I found this one, 45 to 54 years old, absolutely staggering. But they are the stats. My mum's on Facebook. I have to be, my nan is as well, and that's not always gone so well. But, you know, it's really quite amazing. A quarter of the population of Australia between 25, you know, is using Facebook. You're probably starting to think that your target market's probably using Facebook at the moment. It's quite staggering. All right. A quarter of the people using Facebook in Australia said they would post reviews about their holiday or their trip. 70% of those in the 18 to 24 demographic, which won't surprise any of you and may not interest any of you, are actively seeking travel information via Facebook. So are they actually getting on there and advertising? Are they actually getting on there and spruiking? Or are they going to PP Island Resort and chucking up 60 photographs of them and their 4 mates hanging around in Tonsai Bay? Are they going to Bangkok and showing photographs of their wild night, you know, out? Same goes for Indonesia, India and so on. And the truth is, all of my mates, as soon as they go on an overseas trip, they chuck up their 65 photos of where they have just been. And indirectly, they are promoting destinations. My wife and I chose our honeymoon destination based on the fact that my brothers had been on a big trip and we were able to get slightly off-season deals to go to PP Island. And it was all about, oh, here's 300 photos, go online and have a squeeze. It was an easy decision. And this is actively what happens. Even though they might not do a review like TripAdvisor, they go, oh, you know, this hotel was great, we did this, we went to this nightclub. It's what works. If Facebook was a country or a location with 750 million global users, it's smaller only in size to India and China. You know, it is, what's that, 30 odd times the size of the Australian population is on Facebook. So now that I've blown you away with numbers, we'll get back to a bit more of the business-oriented side of social media. Another way to look at LinkedIn is that it is the accepted forum to brag about your professional credibility and capabilities. LinkedIn is really all about having a really nice, succinct resume and description of the skills and services that you offer, and people go specifically to LinkedIn to look for that sort of information. So it's where you build your professional credibility. There's a million company pages, all of the executives from the Fortune 500 club, so the big executives, the big companies have their presence on LinkedIn. It's also a real recruitment hotspot. So, you know, LinkedIn is, I guess you could argue, the professional end of the social media spectrum. Twitter. Think Shane Warne, Liz Hurley, Amy Winehouse. You know, it's all pretty exciting stuff. Interestingly, though, statistics are showing that more people are influenced in their buying decisions by Twitter than they are on any of the other social media platforms, which I find astounding. But Twitter is the ultimate democratization of content online. You can get 7,000 followers, you know, and you can pump a message to them. Even if half of them only read it, you've got 140 characters of information into someone's mind. So as part of a strategy, we often look at Twitter as, you know, you might make a video, you might update your Facebook photographs of a destination, or especially you might update your LinkedIn profile, but Twitter is where you blast everyone and tell about it. And they've subscribed, they've joined, they want to hear from you, so, you know, again, it's an accepted forum for pumping out information. Yeah, it's, again, the numbers are staggering. This one is one of my favourites, which is talking about YouTube. 2 billion viewers per day looking at YouTube, and every single minute, 24 hours of new video content is uploaded to YouTube. So that YouTube alone now uses more data or bandwidth on the internet than the entire internet used in the year 2000. I mean, this is monstrous. Depending on which batch of statistics you believe, and maybe now's a good time to talk about stats, that they ever change, they ever evolve. 80% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Believe whatever you will. We've researched our stats as well as we can. There will ultimately be variable stats that come out that I talk about in this presentation today. But a really good one is that by the year 2013, video will account for about 80% of internet traffic. And it's not hard to believe. Video is engaging, it's interactive, it really gets people looking at content for 67 seconds. And when you think about how people skip through content on the net, if you can land someone on a page for a minute looking at a video about you and or your brand and or about your service, a minute's a long time in the online world to capture someone's imagination and draw them in. If you want to think about how powerful video can be, the recent Egyptian riots, there was the overthrow. It started off with a 2-minute YouTube video which was shared 5 million times that ultimately was the nexus, was the beginning point for the overthrow of government. For our business alone, it has been extremely valuable in generating new business, in getting across a lot of the unspoken communication parts that take place, the body language, the tone of voice, establishing that you are in fact someone who believes in what you're saying. You know, video is a powerful medium, which is one you need to be aware of and understand if you can make it work for your business. I'll just sidetrack a little bit here to talk about mobile device usage in Australia. Can any of you tell me, how does your website look on a mobile phone? Okay, good. That's fine. There is 22.1 million people in Australia, thereabouts. Behind Singapore, Australia is second only to Singapore, rather, for the fastest uptake of mobile phones and PDAs globally. As of July this year, more data was downloaded on smartphones and mobile devices than was downloaded from desktop PCs. So if I go back to that question of how does your website look on mobile devices, if it doesn't work, I can statistically and categorically tell you now that you are missing out on half of your market. You must make sure your website works on a mobile phone. Otherwise, you are increasingly going to have a worthless website as more and more data is downloaded on handhelds. I actually found that stat hard to believe. We checked it again and again and again and again, and that's what people are accessing the internet, is from the palm of their hand, on trains, on buses, on the way to work, twittering with friends, commenting on Facebook with friends. Yeah, it's staggering. Of these PDA users in Australia, 92% of them are using Facebook. Advertising on mobile devices, specific to the travel industry. The space is really dominated by hotels. Does anyone want to take a guess at who the industry group who is practically not represented in mobile targeted advertising or a mobile targeted presence as far as the travel industry goes? Travel agents effectively have a zero presence on mobile oriented communication to the broader user group of people who are traveling. If there's a place where travel agents are losing the war against automated online sales tools, it is the mobile phone. So if there's something to consider or learn about, it really is just get an understanding of the fact that people are looking for businesses on mobile phones. Hotels, B2C companies online are currently capitalising on the market share through the use of mobiles. So it's an important part in considering moving forward. Again, get your website working on a mobile device. So, why does social media work so well? This picture, I think, explains it quite nicely. Viral capacity is not the spreading of diseases as such in this context, but it's the ability for people to post their opinions next to a brand. It's the opportunity for people to make a comment, share an opinion, share some comments, that in turn goes viral, and their word of mouth goes viral, and they can share their experience. And that empowers people. We like to make a difference. We like to feel as though we're important and we've got something to talk about. This word of mouth then creates a network of positive interactions, and ultimately this word of mouth, going back to referral business, is happening in social media. Word of mouth empowerment, it infers trust. By osmosis, people trust those that their friends trust. It results in lead generation. It's democratic. People feel as though they've got a say, and this is what's happening in business in social media. This was the part in the presentation where I was thinking by now people are probably going to get pretty bored with all this technical talk, but I really do want to re-emphasise the point that social media is word of mouth. Word of mouth is what reliably generates business. There's some fancy statistics from a group who will pay too much to come out with a random number of approximately 2/3, but people are sharing opinions and influence other people in their buying decisions online in the real world. So what are travel agents doing? What are people doing to embrace this? We've got a young fella, a guy who runs a travel agency in Carlton. He's late 20s, I believe, just become a first-time dad, and he really got onto first-time dad a couple of weeks ago, and he's really embraced social media as a way to grow their business. And you can see his comments there is that the venue for the conversation or the communication to take place is now Facebook, maybe as opposed to the RSL or the Rotary Club or the shop front or the train or the water cooler. But it's still about creating trust, it's still about building credibility, it's still about connecting with people. So this is where I really want to emphasise that social media is just a new way of doing something that you guys have already been doing for decades, and that is communicating with people, building trust, building credibility, and growing business as a basis of the fact that you treat someone well and they tell somebody about the fact that they got good service. It actually isn't any more complex than that in terms of using social media to grow your business. Again, whilst people talk about, oh, we've created a new Facebook page, LinkedIn, we've put some videos up on YouTube, however they want to say it, people don't spend money on YouTube. They don't spend money at Facebook, they don't spend money at LinkedIn. Ultimately, you're going to do a bit of advertising, get a bit of brand awareness out there, they're going to get word of mouth, they're more than likely going to visit your website for that final online port before they pick up the phone and give you a call. So you still do need to have a good website, you don't need to spend a bucket on it. The good thing that as these technologies have evolved, they're quite a lot cheaper to implement. Certainly when you look at a return on investment compared to producing a printed brochure, which you don't really know what happens with it when you give it to someone, or what, how often do they go dusty in the background. So websites still do matter. They are still an important part of having an online strategy. And an online strategy, so now we're talking about a bit more about how do you make this work, how do you really get social media generating business, is about having a new strategic online presence, is about actually thinking about how you make this work for yourself. And again, there's nothing complex here. It's really about having good conversations with lots of people at the same time in lots of destinations. As a person, we can't have a conversation here at the same time that I'm going to have a conversation in my office in Hawthorne or from the airport later on this afternoon. But in social media, you can have content about which people are discussing and talking about in multiple online locations at the same time. Community, find out who they are, talk to people, interact with them, and it's ultimately about creating a bit of a cocktail that works for you. Everyone has degrees of comfort in sort of how they're willing to put themselves out there. For me personally, one of the greatest challenges of getting my head around marketing from a marketing advisor was, mate, no one wants to do business with someone who says they're pretty good at what they do. They want to do business with the best, and they start off by thinking about who the best is by the bloke who's willing, the bloke or the lady, who's willing to stand up there and say, we are the best at what we do. So that was one of my greatest challenges. For other people, they find it very hard to do video or presentations. I'm pretty comfortable with both of those. I don't like doing print media because it's just not something that works for me. I don't mind doing Facebook. I quite like LinkedIn because I like the professional aspect for it. And as a result, our marketing activities in Rooms XML have been reflected through how we use these different mediums to communicate with people. So you've got to find what works for you and what you feel comfortable with. So let's look at the evolution of this Web 1, the evolution of this Web 2 thing, this online strategy, the web presence. So let's think about your first website. It was probably an online version of a brochure that you had printed in the shop. And you probably published it around the time when people said, oh, the internet won't last. How many people heard that conversation late 90s? Oh, email. Who's going to bother with that? How's that going to be important for my business? But thinking about those first websites is they were back to that concept of pushing information at people. You didn't really know what they were doing with it once you put a website out there, what was going on. And you're probably just talking about yourself or your business, where you sell airfares and hotels. Then over time, people got a bit cleverer with their websites and they realised you could pinch information and share information, and the data on your website didn't need to be about yourself. And so those colours are a little bit tricky to read, but what this graph explains is in the one website you can pull information from different places, and you can have a website with lots of really valuable information, but you're still really just pushing it at people. It's just a better radio show. Then as this concept of interactivity began to evolve, you sort of had groups evolving in places like Facebook, MySpace friends, people were uploading video to YouTube, photographs to Flickr, and it started to get a bit more personal, a little bit of interactivity, and really sort of there was news going on around the place. Then as people really started to embrace these technologies and really get a handle on them, it was really about having a presence in lots of different places and having conversations that were taking place. So news from a destination, share videos, plan a trip online, see the real photos of the place from someone who took the photo of that place, but they booked it through this travel agent, so on and so forth. So it's a lot more about the interactions, it's a lot more about the democracy of communicating online. So next, really, how do you make this work? Where do you get started? You know, if we've defined, or we can agree that word of mouth generates business and referral is a very reliable way to generate business, and we've talked about these online tools, and how do you actually bring this all together as part of a word of mouth marketing strategy or a communication strategy for your business? And it becomes this cocktail concept of, you know, really, a lot of it is about establishing credibility and establishing yourself as a specialist or a knowledgeable person in your field. It's about having simple messages, and it might be talking about having active involvement in both online and offline communities. You know, undertaking some research or acquiring some stats, like what I showed you before. You know, 25 to 54-year-olds are basically half the Facebook users in Australia. That's powerful information, but your word of mouth marketing strategy needs to consider all these different aspects of what's going on online. The important aspect is that if you don't take note of these things happening, it is really going to disadvantage you in trying to grow and develop new business, because people are expecting these to be part of your marketing kit as you move forward in creating new business. So if you're anything like what I was when we started considering what our word of mouth marketing strategy and online strategy was going to be about, you know, whereabouts do you start? How do you, oh great, this all sounds very good, Mark, but what the hell are we going to do with it? The steps are no different from any other part of business growth, marketing or strategy. And something that, as I have learned more about business, is first of all, you've got to get a really good handle about where you are now and what you are doing and how effective you are and how's your organisation positioned. I went to Canberra on Wednesday and visited a number of agents, 3 old agents and 3 new agents. One of whom had basically said, oh, we are finding this all too challenging, we're probably going to shut our doors. And I think it was because of the fact that probably realistically towards the end of what they wanted to achieve with the business, nearing retirement age, a few younger staff in the office, or relatively younger, but they just couldn't get their head around about the evolution they needed to undertake in order to grow their business and get a handle on this stuff. So part of that gap analysis of where are we and where we want to be for them was they probably needed to get some information about the sorts of marketing tools available out there. Not so much to be sold them, but just to understand them. And part of their decision might be to say, no, I don't want to do anything, you know, I really do want out of it, it's too much to get hold of, or, gee, my son or daughter's been talking about this Facebook thing for a while, I wonder if they can come in and tell me a bit about it, show me how it works. So you can set a baseline and understand where you are now. From that point onwards, it obviously gives you a point of where to grow. Defining your goals and objectives is obviously starting to get to that point of where do we want to be. So what steps do we have to take to get from here to there? It's pretty simple when you look at it. And those steps might be, we want 30% more business turnover. How are we going to do it? We probably need 40% more new clients because we lose 10% every year. How are we going to get new clients? Whereabouts are they making travel decisions? So on and so forth. So it's obviously more complex, but it gets you an idea of what you need to do. The next thing is, get your head around search engine optimization. Generally speaking, that means basic website, how you generally find it. It is still an important part of the equation. Search engine optimization is also a process of ensuring you've got nice, simple, easy to understand messages. Just make sure what you're talking about makes sense. Make sure what you're talking about matches consumer buying decisions. And we'll cover that in a little bit. The next thing is decide upon and create your social media presence. The things that you can all do that you all must do is get a LinkedIn page. Great place to start, particularly if any of you are doing corporate business or selling personal or private traveller agents to corporates, is have a LinkedIn page because they will come and check you out. If you don't, they may not take you seriously. How do you get a LinkedIn page? You go to linkedin.com, create an account, follow the instructions, copy and paste information, and you are there. It's a really valuable thing to do. It's a free of charge thing to do, and you must do it as soon as you can. Like anything, and I think this is an area that challenges people, but is you don't just build a website and leave it there. You don't just build a hotel and leave it there. To build it does not mean they will come. No sooner unfortunately, have you built a new website or a new Facebook page or undertaken a really cool, innovative marketing strategy or product development, have your competitors begun to do it. We've seen it in Rooms XML once, 18 months ago. We had a fairly unique sort of proposition with the way our the technology ran our business. We've heard from our Saudi partners, there's now 7 equivalents of Rooms XML in Saudi Arabia alone. People with technology can catch up quickly. So it's all about, what do you want to do? Set a budget, evolve, update content, or find someone who can give you updated content. Find ways to continually improve what you're doing. Again, it doesn't need to be onerous, it doesn't need to be expensive, you just need to be aware of the fact that content that's 6 months old is now really, really old when it comes to a website. Promotions, you know, what can you give away, what can you do to stimulate business? You've all been doing it, you know it works. And a really important aspect, because later on it resets your baseline, is to track what's happening. If you do, so we send out marketing emails, we have a pretty good idea of who opens the Rooms XML marketing emails. We have an idea of what day of the week to send an email. We have an idea of what time on that day to send an email to get maximum open rates. We know the ones that get open the best, the destinations that are most popular, the ones that people really couldn't be bothered about. People can't be bothered about reading about technology. They are really interested in testimonials. In fact, if you don't mind me drawing this up, Joe was the second Rooms XML customer in Australia that we had. I think first couple of bookings went pretty well. I think we might have had an issue on the third or the fourth booking that we overcame pretty quickly. And it wasn't too long after then that Joe mentioned to other people, oh, you should have a look at Rooms XML. Online marketing led to a good professional interaction, took a conversation into the real world which stimulated a referral. And from that we've learned over time that referrals used sparingly are a great way to generate new business online. So you've got to find that balance that works for you. So again, tracking, bring that down to the bottom, work out what's working for you, and then keep reinvesting in what's working. Not everything does, but you find out the mix that works for you. So in terms of getting those messages right, what words do I actually put into social media? What should go into my video, my sales promotion, my marketing email, my Twitter post, whatever? It's just important to refresh the aspect of making sure that your message matches the buying decisions of people. The first one is they decide, we're going to go on a holiday. Who's recently been on a holiday? Where did they go? Fiji sounds nice. Whereabouts do you stay in Fiji? Who'd you book with? It's this process of deciding to decide, we're going to Fiji. Right, we're going to ring 3 travel agents and get a price. It's at this point that they sort of select from all of the available options. This next one, this experience the process, is a really interesting one. That used to be where you sat with a friend 10, 15 years ago and they talked to you face to face over a coffee, or they sat for half an hour on the phone, you know, the one that was plugged into the wall that people used to use a while ago, and they shared their experience. Think about TripAdvisor these days. You don't need to go to Bangkok and check out 300 hotels to know statistically which are the top 10 hotels in Bangkok anymore. TripAdvisor is a vehicle for sharing experience. It's an experience simulator. And this experience process now takes place a lot in the online space. Then they make their purchase. If the purchase goes well, you might be lucky enough to generate ongoing usage. I'll just drop out a little bit then and talk about, you've all heard about these Groupon, these Scoopon, these coupon, purchases where you can, right? It's a really interesting one that works really well for Groupon or Scoopon, but it generates absolutely no brand loyalty whatsoever. People don't go, wow, we can stay at the symbol for 40% off because we got this deal through our phone. From that point onwards, they look at whereabouts they can stay for 40% off using Groupon. If there's something I can tell you to avoid, I would suggest avoid using that as a marketing tool, because it will be relatively short-lived and it won't benefit your business, it will benefit those providing the service to generate the business, which is Groupon or Scoop. The other perspective here with that message to buying decisions is understanding that the most powerful people you can have to advertise your brand is other people. So if you can shift people from being a satisfied customer to being someone who's comfortable bragging about how proud they are for the fact that they had so-and-so provide them a product or service, is a really important part of regenerating new business. So, what in fact can you do? Well, as well, if we talk about how you want to go and put your social media cocktail together, these are some of the activities you can actually undertake. And is it actually any different from what any of you are doing at the moment? Alright, you might not be chucking a video up there, but I'm sure you're talking about hotspots, you're talking about how cruises have become astoundingly popular, you're providing your opinions on destinations. Well, I'd stay at this hotel, or I wouldn't fly Tiger Airways if I was going away for a week somewhere. You're already doing all this sort of stuff, and so social media becomes a new avenue for you to do it all. So, in summary, before we hand over to the floor for a few questions, I think the biggest one to understand is your customers are expecting you to have an online presence through social media. Now, my family run a window furnishings business, and they still laugh at me when I tell them this sort of stuff can benefit their business. So it's not for everyone. I can understand if you're either bored witless already at the moment, or it's not something that interests you. but I can tell you it interests your customers. And therefore, if you want to grow your business, it's time to at least get a handle on what this stuff's all about and incorporate it into the way that you grow your business.